Hello everybody, how are you guys doing? I hope everything is fine wherever you are. This is Spanish Grandmaster Pepe Cuenca and I welcome you to the game of the day of Magnus Carlsen Chess 2 Finals, where, as you guys know, Magnus Carlsen, the world champion, is facing Hikaru Nakamura for the championship, for the trophy. And before today, Hikaru Nakamura was leading 2-1, what meant that Magnus Carlsen had to go all in today if he didn't want Hikaru Nakamura to escape too far away. So the match has been very interesting. You guys can follow every single day with commentary in different languages, and the match didn't disappoint today, and there was only one decisive game. So this is the game that we're gonna take a look at, and just fasten your seatbelts and try to enjoy this fantastic chess game between Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura. So the world champion was driving the white pieces and he started with the move e4. Nakamura replies with e5. Knight f3, knight c6, and as you guys know, there are different options here. So the Scotch with d4, the Spanish Ruy Lopez with bishop b5, and Carlsen goes for the Italian with bishop c4. Very trendy opening nowadays in the top elite tournaments. So here Hikaru Nakamura replies with bishop c5, another natural move, developing this bishop pointing to f2. And now there are different ways to play here. You can play c3, you can play d3, or short castle, which is the move that Magnus Carlsen chose in this position. Short castle, knight f6, attacking e4 and d3 to protect that guy over there. So Hikaru Nakamura plays d6, another interesting move, just protecting e5. Now this bishop is able to be developed in the future. Now after this move d6, now black is threatening this knight a5, just grabbing the bishop pair. So that's why now you should react by giving some space to this bishop. And this is done with the move c3. A move that has several ideas. The first one is to give the c2 square for the bishop. For example, after knight a5, you can play bishop b5, c6, bishop a4, and after b5, you got this c2 square for the bishop. The second idea with this c3 is to push on the queen side with a move like b4. This is normally done in the Italian opening, in many cases with the white pieces. And the third idea is to reinforce the center. In many cases you want to push d4, so to have a pawn on c3 really helps. So black continues with h6, a prophylactic move against bishop g5, and rook e1 by Magnus Carlsen. Normally in the future, if you want to push with d4, you need to reinforce the center, this pawn on e4. Another idea behind this rook e1 is to leave this f1 square free for the knight. Sorry for this arrow, but normally you want to develop this knight via d2 and then f1, and finally this knight can join the party via e3 or g3. For example, from g3 you keep reinforcing this e4 pawn, and you have this f5 square in mind to jump in many cases. So short castle by Hikaru Nakamura and knight b to d2 from Magnus Carlsen. Now there are two ways to play usually in these Italian openings for black here. You can play a6 and you can play a5. With a6, you give this a7 square for the bishop, which is very interesting. You put this bishop on a7, so basically you are playing prophylactically against d4 or b4. The other way to play is to move a5, which stops immediately the move b4. And this is what Nakamura played in this game, a5. So Magnus continues with the knight maneuver with knight f1, and bishop e6 is played by Hikaru Nakamura, sorry. And probably at home you would be saying right now, come on Pepe, this is a stupid move because now you're allowing white to take on e6 and double black's pawn on the e5. Well, that is true. Actually, bishop e6 is a really natural move. In the game, Magnus continued with bishop e5. We have to say something positive for black after this capture. It's true that now you have the double pawns on the e-file, but it's true also that now this pawn on e6 is doing a fantastic job because it's controlling two important squares, d5 and f5. Also, this file now has been opened, and now black has some interesting attacking ideas on this f-file, and also bringing the queen to the action. For example, queen e8 followed by queen g6. Also these knight maneuvers from e7 to g6 and also h5, what means that actually black has a lot of contemplate in return for the double pawns. So alright, so in the game white plays bishop b5, which is now threatening a winning move actually. For example, you play something stupid like rook e8, now white will win immediately with the move d4. Now after takes, the bishop retreats, now d5 just wins the game in the spot, right? Well, or at least will pose black some troubles, because now it's true that you can still play bishop b4 and black could survive. But for example, this is an idea that you should keep in mind in many cases. d4 followed by d5, just winning a piece on the spot. So that's why rook e8 is not played in this kind of positions, but instead Nakamura reacts with knight e7. Now there's no d4 followed by d5 winning a piece in the spot, and also this knight wants to come to the g6 square. So now Magnus pushes on the center with d4, e takes d4, c takes d4. We have to say that bishop b6 is also possible in this position, but okay, Nakamura decides to take on d4, Magnus takes back with the pawn on d4, and bishop b6 by Hikaru Nakamura. Now Magnus Carlsen says, you know what, I'm gonna bring this knight to the party. There's a nice salsa party on g3, so this knight is doing a fantastic job on g3, right? And now finally Hikaru Nakamura decides to react in the center with the move d5. Well, now Magnus reacts with the move e5, and now Nakamura sacrifices a pawn with knight e4, and Magnus Carlsen doesn't take that pawn with the move knight takes e4. Well, we have to think a little bit about this position. I recommend you to pause this video and then use a real chessboard and then try to think what happens if white takes the pawn on e4. It's actually possible, and there have been like some games, some top games where white has taken this pawn on e4. In the game, sorry, Magnus played bishop d3, forcing black to trade on g3. But let's try to understand what happens if white takes this pawn on e4. Pawn takes, rook takes, and now after the move c5, there's many pressure on d4, right? So next move is gonna be bishop f5, and then c takes e4. For example, in a game, white played bishop d3, bishop b5, f5, sorry, and when the rook goes away, now we can take this pawn on d4 with a balanced position more or less. Okay, so bishop d3 from Magnus Carlsen, knight takes e3, h takes g3, and now Nakamura pushes this a pawn with a4. Now Magnus Carlsen attacks his pawn with bishop c2, and now black has to make a decision. Black can play queen d7, which is maybe the most natural move, just protecting this pawn on a4. Probably after queen d7, now white has interesting ideas with knight h4, controlling f5. So now with the idea of setting up this beautiful machine in order to give some checkmate on h7, which is at least tricky for black in this position. But instead Nakamura tries to play in a really interesting way with the move a3, sacrificing this pawn on the spot. Well, of course, after b takes a3, in the future when black strikes in the center with c5, this pawn is gonna get past, and also a3 is gonna be weak. It's true that white is a pawn up, but it's a double pawn, so it's not much, right? Here white had another really interesting possibility, let's say. So Magnus just took the pawn. He said, you know, I'm really hungry, you know, so I'm just gonna grab the pawn, just you know, give me that pawn, baby. But b4 was extremely interesting too in this position, because now you're stopping one of black's contemplate ideas with c5, and also in the future you want to grab this pawn with rook b1 and rook a3, also queen d3 ideas, and grab this pawn without having double pawns on the a5, right? But instead Magnus just took the pawn, and now I think Hikaru Nakamura made his first inaccuracy in this position. He went for bishop g4, and now we're gonna try to explain why maybe this was not the best idea. We always say that it's really easy to talk from outside, right? As a commentator, you have the engines to help you. You have another colleague, and you don't feel the pressure of a real chess tournament. So we always talk with the deepest respect to the players, of course. So b takes a3. We were saying that bishop g4 is not maybe the best move in the position. Really interesting was bishop f5, just trying to trade this strong bishop from c2, so no more checkmating ideas on h7. Let's say bishop takes f5, knight takes f5, and here, okay, white has several attacking ideas, for example with g4, g5, but if you play something like queen d3, now you can retreat this knight to a7, and then you find this nice route for the knight, c6, a5, c4, and then putting some pressure on a3, and probably getting back this pawn. What means this position is actually pretty interesting. But Nakamura plays bishop g4, trying to put a lot of pressure on d4, and maybe he was thinking that after knight f5, a lot of pressure would be put on this d4 pawn, but actually knight f5 is never possible. Just Magnus Carlsen plays a4, nice move now, giving this interesting square for the bishop, trying to activate this guy here by a3, And now we have to say that if you play knight f5, which looks, the first glance, very, very interesting, just trying to take on f3 and then to take on d4, we have this strong move, which is queen d3. And now you see real troubles on this h7 square, and also real threats, like for example knight h2, which is basically winning the game on the spot. So that's why not easy to increase the pressure on d4, let's say. So that's why Nakamura plays queen d7, just connecting the rooks, and Magnus goes for bishop a3. And here Nakamura of course wants to do something with this knight on e7, so that's why he plays rook f2 e8, and now Magnus well, makes a move that is not easy to make. Why? Because he keeps up the bishop pair by taking on e7. I completely understand his decision, because now black's idea is really simple. He wants to go knight c6, he wants to go knight a5 and knight c4, and maybe when this knight is moved to c6 or to other square, this bishop on a3 is basically doing nothing. So that's why I understand Magnus's decision of taking this knight on e7, and he has a lot of concrete ideas after this capture on e7. So he took on e7, queen takes e7, and now queen d3, threatening checkmate in 2 moves. So that's why only move from Nakamura g6, stopping this entrance on h7. And now we have to say that white should react actually pretty dynamically, otherwise black is gonna just play bishop d7 and then try to capture this pawn on a4. For example, you play rook a to b1, bishop d7, and now you're gonna tell me how we're gonna protect this guy on a4. I don't see a clear way. So that's why Magnus Carlsen plays after g6, he goes knight h4, which is a very interesting move. Not only attacking on g6 and intend to go for some interesting sacrifices on g6, but also in the future you want to push the f pawn, for example with f3, f4 and f5, creating some extra troubles in black's position. So here the game gets very, very concrete. Nakamura goes for queen b4, using the fact that now white can't protect this pawn on d4 because the d1 square, is covered by this bishop. And then the position gets extremely crazy. We're gonna try to explain what happens after this move, but we have to say that white is threatening a lot of stuff. For example, you want to go for the same idea with bishop d7, you can just play e6, boom. Now, using the fact that black is forced to take on e6 with the bishop, and now knight g6 is a huge baboom. Pawn takes, king f8, queen h6, and if you cover with queen g7, there's rook e6, just winning. If you go, for example, king g8, then boom, bishop f5, just winning on the spot. So that's why not an easy position to play for Nakamura. He goes for queen b4, and now knight g6 from Magnus Carlsen. Of course, if pawn takes on g6, queen takes g6, followed by queen g4 at least, and white wins on the spot. So that's why Hikaru Nakamura plays queen d4, saying, you know what, Magnus, if you take on d4, bishop takes d4, now there is a double attack on the rook on a1, on the knight on g6, and basically you're gonna lose, my man. So that's why Magnus finds a really nice move in this position, which is knight e7, which looks crazy. Probably again some of you at home will be saying, come on, stupid Spanish guy, Pepe, I don't understand this move. I just take this knight and then game is over for white. Not at all, because after rook takes e7, there is checkmate in 2 moves. Now the rook is on the escape square for the black skin. So king f8, queen h8, there is no king e7 anymore. So that's why you cannot take this knight on e7, and Nakamura went for king f8 in this position. And here Magnus went for knight d5. And this is the position where Nakamura blunders, makes a huge blunder in this position. He could actually hold by playing something like queen takes d3, bishop takes d3, and bishop a5, let's say rook a3. Even though Magnus Carlsen is 2 pawns up, he's got double pawns on the a5, and Nakamura has the bishop pair. So the engine says this is more or less holdable, as you guys can see on this beautiful bar on the left side. Well, it says like little advantage for white. Another possibility was to play rook takes e5 here in this position, and now knight takes b6, queen takes e3, bishop takes d6, rook e1, c takes b6, and bishop e5, and white's a pawn up, but still there are many chances to hold this position. For example, with bishop e6, then trying to activate this rook on the c file or the d file. Still a lot of work to do for Magnus Carlsen in this position. Well, Nakamura played very ambitious with the move queen takes f2, and now after king h2, suddenly This king is extremely safe on h2, and now some bad things are about to happen on the f-file for this black's king. Now Nakamura plays rook a d8, and this is a really beautiful position. So Magnus played rook f1, and now we have to understand a lot of things in this position. First one is that if you remove the queen from the f-file, let's say from queen d4, intending to trade queens, just praying, okay, Magnus Carlsen, please trade the queens, please. No, it's not gonna happen, because after boom, rook takes f7, king takes f7, queen g6, king f8, and rook f1, black has to resign. Okay, probably the best continuation from Nakamura here was to take on d5, and after queen takes d5, bishop e6, and then try to hold this position, but still is losing according to the engines. Nakamura took on e5, which is very interesting. Now rook takes f2 from Magnus Carlsen, and here Nakamura took on d5, and now we're gonna try to understand what happens after this beautiful move. Well, first we have to say that bishop f2, which looks at first glance very interesting, because now this knight is pinned, and also rook h5 is actually checkmate. There's only one move here that wins for Magnus Carlsen, which is queen a3. Really subtle, this move, because after king g7 you just remove this knight to f4. Now there's no pin anymore on the d file, and you are covering this fantastic square h5, so there's no mate, and means that white has a queen for a rook, which is basically game over for Hikaru Nakamura. So that's why he cannot take on f2, but he took on d5, and again this position is very difficult to play for white. Well, there's only one winning move, and Magnus Carlsen spot that. But of course, you can never move the rook from f2, because there is rook h5 checkmate. And Magnus finds the best move here, which is boom, rook f7, just winning the game. King f7 was losing also. Hikaru Nakamura decided to go for king e8. But after king f7, the idea is to go rook f1, and basically you have to go either to e7, e8, g7 or g8. All of them allow basically a check with the queen. So let's say, for example, queen e7, just queen h7 check, king g6, and this is a key. Queen g6, attacking the bishop and the king. You have to cover the king with bishop e6, and now this key move g4, which is fantastic, covering h5, so there's no mate anymore, and also winning the game due to the material advantage. So in the game, Nakamura decides to go king e8, just trying to see if Magnus blunders mating one on h5, but here just Magnus finds the best way to win the game, to simplify with the move queen takes d5. Again, easy and efficient. Rook takes d5 and bishop g6, protecting the rook on f7, covering h5, and basically this is game over. King d8, rook e1. Now the plan is very simple for black. You want to go rook h7 and rook e8, and basically there's no way to stop that. So c6 was played, rook takes b7, bishop c7, rook e8, king d7, and rook h8, followed by rook h7 or rook h6, and basically Nakamura had to resign today. Well, this tournament has been fantastic, and the finals extremely exciting. 2-2, you know, is the best of 7 matches, so this means that the winner will be the one who managed to win 4 matches today. Magnus Carlsen played extremely well, so Hikaru basically had no chances today. And tomorrow we'll come back with another match, best of 4 games, and you guys will be able to enjoy that in English, Spanish, German, Chinese, whatever. Yeah, too many languages. So I hope you guys enjoyed this game as much as I did analyzing it. So it's been a pleasure as usual, and see you guys tomorrow in the game of the day, I hope. So have a good day, and if you drink, don't drive. See you guys. I'm gonna play some basketball with my friends. Bye bye.